I'm going to first be discussing this piece that I did. And there's 2 skills that you need to kind of fully be able to do this style of drawing. So you need to know how to use the alpha lock feature in Procreate, and then you also need to know about clipping masks. So I'll quickly show you how to do those before we go into, and then we're going to just like watch my time lapse and see what I did in each step. So first of all, you can see these little arrows that are pointing down. So that means I've clipped. So this illustration here of all the cats is a drawing that I've clipped all of these aspects to. So like these flowers have all been clipped to it, and it's actually just a white drawing. And you can see what's lovely about clipping masks is it's non-destructive, so you can clip multiple items to the same one. The way alpha lock works is if it keeps your layers low. So in Procreate, sometimes you have a limited amount of layers depending on what size your file is. So if you're trying to make a relatively big drawing, sometimes you only have 8 layers to work with. So alpha lock is a great way to still clip to your drawing. So what that means essentially is you do your drawing, and then say you want to like fill it in with a different color or you want to paint it. When you alpha lock to it, you then can't draw anywhere past where you've already established those lines. So I've made use of alpha lock on these individual pieces here. So these flowers are all alpha locked. So I drew the shape first, and then to alpha lock an item, you just go here. And so you can see the clipping mask is on this one, but initially they were also alpha locked so that I could draw within those shapes. So now we're going to look at the time lapse and we'll see how that alpha lock played out. So I drew these shapes, and then each different flower was a different layer. So all the white flowers are on one layer and all the gray ones, and then the darker gray ones are on a separate layer. You obviously don't have to go this complicated if you want to do this effect. But I do find like if you just want like a color wash, then alpha lock is your friend. So you just draw your artwork and then do like a lovely little color wash over top would probably be the fastest way to do it. But for these ones, I liked them to all be a separate layer because they were all intermingling in different ways. And I just wanted to make sure that I could move them around. So if I didn't like the placement of a flower, I could then like shift it if I needed to and stuff like that. So these are all alpha locked. So I selected alpha lock once I drew the shapes, and then I couldn't paint anywhere past those. So then I used a nice big brush, and I wasn't worried about having to stay to that shape. It was just stuck to it essentially. I drew some lines on them. I just made them pretty, and then I did a little bit of background work to just kind of I didn't want any white to show through just because I am creating this effect of this like double exposure. So I wanted to make sure that nothing was white so that you wouldn't lose any of the image. So now here I've started drawing them. So what I did is all of these have been clipped now to a new layer, and then I started drawing with a white brush. And I like to use a really like thick non-translucent brush, so that everything kind of shows through 100%. But you can play around with translucency, different opacities, and see what works for you. There's some really interesting effects you can do. Again, it sounds scary and it looks kind of scary when you get started, but it's a really, really good skill, and it translates to so many things. And being able to use alpha lock and clipping mask interchangeably is really helpful because, again, I've alpha locked these flowers so that I can just stick to that shape, and it wasn't super important to be able to like edit them independently of each other. But then for my artwork, it's independent of all those flowers, so I then can go fix the flowers if they're too light, and I can move the cats, and I'm not moving the flowers so that they're then like out of sync or anything by accident, right? So it looks scary. You obviously, for this effect, you don't have to have this many clips. You can even use a photo. You can use just kind of like an abstract color palette. The clipping mask in particular works well if you have a little bit more of a complicated pattern and you want to keep that pattern independent of your artwork. So it creates a lovely effect. And what's great too is you can reuse the pattern and it'll look different depending on what you draw, right? So it's definitely interesting to see how you can translate it to other parts of your artwork.